Right. Hi, Mary.
Hi, how are you? How's everyone today? This cool weather that we're experiencing.
It's a good time to have a fireside chat.
Right, exactly. I feel like the fire is burning right next to me.
So in that video, we saw the iconic train station, 500,000 square feet, 3,100 workers over the last 6 years put in 1.7 million hours of work. There's a stat about how much grout, I think, went into the redevelopment of the station. On June 6th, you had a small ribbon-cutting ceremony to open up the station with 20,000 of your close friends, and Eminem, and Jack White, and Diana Ross, and broadcasting on NBC. Just incredible, incredible moment for Detroit. But that station is part of something even larger that Ford is doing in Corktown and on that campus. So can you talk a little bit about what is the bigger vision? What's everything happening down? When you think Michigan Central, what does that mean?
Well, great. Thanks, Andrew. And thank you so much for having me today. And before I launch into answering, I really do want to commend Andrew and his organization. If you haven't given, please go to the table and learn more. Not only is it an amazing organization, but Andrew himself is a fantastic leader. And so your money's in good hands. So yeah, I mean, it's amazing that this amount of time has passed. I look in the mirror and I know how much time has passed. But, in 2017, Bill Ford, our executive chair, was looking around and saw that there was so much happening in Detroit. And you may remember back then that some corporations were looking for Detroit kind of buildings. Lear was down there, others were down there. And Bill had done a lot in the early days with Ford Field, and so he was always very passionate about the city. And so he asked me to kind of go out and start looking for, some real estate in the city. And then, he's sort of honed in on Corktown because actually he's from Cork, Ireland, which is how Corktown was established, with the Irish coming in. And then as we talked about what he wanted to do, he really wanted it to be more than just a real estate project. So sorry to say that for the real estate folks in the room, but it was really more of a vision, a huge kind of ambitious vision, which was to think about how do we not cede the mobility future to anybody else. And at that time, we were also traveling a lot. We were going to Silicon Valley, we were going to Austin, Texas, and we were seeing companies like Google and Apple and others coming into our space. And, Bill was sort of concerned about that. He said, look, we have to really attract the best and the brightest to Detroit in order to ensure that we're going to be really well set for the next 100 years. And so his ambitious goal was to really create an innovation hub, which is what Michigan Central is. It's a 30-acre innovation hub that not only includes this beautiful real estate that we'll talk about, but also includes a lot of other things that include advanced infrastructure, a lot of equity and diversity in the community, and really, most importantly, it is not a Ford campus. I remember in the first 3 years of talking about this program, I started every talk with that because people didn't understand that. Why would a corporation spend all that money to renovate these buildings if it wasn't for Ford? And I think that's what's really unique and special about what's happening here is that it really is an open platform for others. And so that was the genesis of the project.
So that station opened in December 1913. Literally a week later, Ford announced the $5 workday, which at the time doubled what a factory worker at Ford made. And that led to This is in 1913, so that led to people migrating from the South, people coming from Ireland and Europe and immigrating here, and they came through that train station. They probably got a job at Ford, and they had an opportunity to make a life for themselves. And that's what you're hoping to recreate through this. So when you say open platform, like what does that mean, and why is that attractive to people that are maybe thinking about coming to Detroit?
So, I'm not from Detroit, and I have to tell you that when we bought the station in 2018, we opened it for 3 days. And we had 26,000 people come through to see the station. Remember, it had been shuttered, but not really. People were breaking in, they stole everything. There was really nothing left. It was in really terrible shape. But people had their stories. And they literally walked through telling me their stories of exactly what you talked about. This is the place where I came from Tennessee to start my new life with my family. This is where my uncle went off to war and never came back. And I was really incredibly struck by how much passion people had for this one building. And so as we think about the future, we want to make sure that those stories and that future is created there. And so while the station itself, as we discussed, will be the center point of kind of the cultural activity, there's a lot already happening. So what I love about the project is, and it really speaks to how bricks and mortar are important for placemaking, but you can do a lot without bricks and mortar. And so one of the things we started doing was creating the programming before the buildings were even finished. So we went out, we started to look at who we could partner with. We partnered with a company called New Lab out of New York, who was doing something really special in Brooklyn to create an innovative ecosystem. And we started working with them before any buildings were finished. And then that led to the opening of the Book Depository, which is next door to the train station, which has been open since a year ago, March. And there's already over 100 startups in there. You know, there's over $600 million in VC investment. The diversity of the companies is incredible because companies are not just from Michigan, they're from all over the world. And they're coming to Detroit because they're seeing what Detroit has to offer, which is it's a very unique city with a lot of grit and creativity. And frankly, it's a more affordable city than California or even Texas anymore. And so this is the beginning of this ecosystem that we're building. And now with the opening of the train station, you know, I think what's really special is that people are coming back, reimagining the stories that they created in the early days, but now it really is about the future.
But go back 7 years ago, right? You can say this is what it could be. You can hear the stories, but then you're looking at this building that had become iconic, a representation of Detroit for all of the wrong reasons. And Bill Ford says this is what we're going to transform. What's your first reaction, and how do you get a project that's totally unique and of this size? How do you get momentum going within Ford in the community?
Yeah, so I mean, I'm not going to lie, I was looking at 3-story buildings in downtown Detroit. One of my favorites is the building that Lululemon is in on Woodward. I was looking at that building. So it was really his ambitious vision. And when he came to us, we thought it was brilliant, actually, right? To take an old train station that was the symbol of so much that we just discussed and really reinvent it for the future. But it was a massive undertaking. And, you know, it was already owned by a family that needed to sell it. You know, there were a lot of issues related to that. And then we had to go to our board of directors and get them to buy into it, right? Because this was going to be $1 billion of Ford Motor Company capital that was going to underpin this incredible initiative. And, you know, we were fortunate to have a CEO at the time who really understood the power of place and the power of creating this kind of innovative, you know, destination. But I'm not going to lie, it wasn't easy because a lot of people didn't get it, right? They didn't understand why you would invest with that kind of significant capital into something that just wasn't for us. I think over the years, people have realized the importance of not only what this brings to Detroit. I mean, let's face it, Corktown was always a really amazing and vibrant community. And I always want to say that because it wasn't like we came in and saved Corktown or Southwest Detroit. But there was 30 acres, including this building, as Andrew said, that was the epitome of the rise and fall of Detroit, right? This was the building that was on the cover of Time magazine as kind of the symbol of the worst days of Detroit. And I think Bill really took that to heart and said, you know, without renovating this building, that will always loom over the city as a reminder. And the reality is, what developer is going to take that on, right? We were very fortunate as a corporate entity that we are not a traditional developer, right? We did not have to sit there and go, okay, what's the 15% ROI that we have to achieve with this project? Now, don't get me wrong, it can't be a noose around the company's neck, right? And we have an amazing CEO in Josh Seierfman who's leading the effort there to make this a sustainable business. But, you know, I'm really proud as a Ford employee that Bill had the vision to do this because even during COVID, think about during COVID, we started this project, super ambitious. I'm not going to lie. We walked around and I thought, I don't even know how you bring this place back. I mean, the rubble, the water, the degradation. Even the Book Depository, we don't talk about it, but it is such like a sleeper, right? That was another 30-year-old abandoned building with trees growing out of the roof, and now it's this amazingly beautiful place. But you know, when you think about that, and then COVID hits, only a corporation a subsidized corporate program like this could have continued, right? Because at that time, everyone looked at us and said, are you really going to continue with this? Like, we don't even know where the future of office space and commercial, is going to go. And we just kept at it. So, I think that really speaks to just the difference in this project, having Ford Motor Company underpin it.
And Ford will have talk about what presence Ford will have on the campus, and then who else is a part of this community, or what else you're thinking about for use of the space.
Yeah, so we always are very clear that our home at Ford Motor Company is in Dearborn, and we, are building actually a new building there, which we call the Hub, which is going to be beautiful. But the Detroit location will be wonderful for some of our more advanced, programs. So our electrification programs, our software engineers, because really the vision, and Bill's vision was always, we want a front row seat to innovation too. So he always talked about the automotive industry being in a kind of an insular industry in an insular town. And really the way to be creative, as you all know, is to kind of be with not like-minded people, right? It's great to be in a location where you're surrounded by others who are innovating and creative. And so that's really the idea. So in the station itself will have 3 Ford floors, but there are lots of other floors. We're going to have some philanthropic presence there, which is wonderful. And, I think what will be created there, which we're already seeing with the book depository next door, is just a really unique, diverse community. And the reality is, and we know this happens, we've seen it already at the book, is that someone goes down to get a cup of coffee at the cafe and starts talking to the person next to them, didn't know them before, and before you know it, together they're ideating and creating something brand new, right? So I remember the New Lab partner that we, sort of chose to work with us in the book depository. I went out to Brooklyn to see what they were doing, and I met a company that was a battery company, and I met a company that was a bicycle company, and they did not know each other before, and literally they met at the cafe, and then they created an electric bike together. Never would they have met if they hadn't have been in the same ecosystem.
And part of our competitive edge in Detroit is some of the space that we have, right? This isn't going to be packed densely into a downtown area. There's space where you were able to add some amenities that these companies can test and use, things that they couldn't get in a downtown San Francisco. Can you talk about some of the ways you're reusing some of this space down there?
So that was, sort of all the heavy lifting that had to be done over the last 6 years, right? So we have one of the first transportation innovation zones in the area, which means that these small companies or startups get expedited permitting to give their, to try their inventions. We learned that early on. We had a company, it took them 6 months to get a permit from the city, and by then when you're a startup, you've gone under, right? So it has to be faster. Of course it will be safe, but it has to be faster. We have one of the first electrified roads in the country. And what that means is that there is technology where, there is electrification in the road, so instead of having to plug your car in, if you have the right portal in your car, you can actually charge your car while driving along the cement. And so what's exciting is that Detroit is being looked at as kind of an innovation and creative and really inventor again. That's our history, right? We were the inventors of so many things, and we don't want to, sort of lose that. And so I think what's really happening here with a lot, and then you speak to just the place. The other thing that we recognized is we're going to have 13 acres, 12 to 13 acres of public space. Where in the city can you have an innovation zone like this and have 13 acres of public space that will be open to the community? And that will knit together so many wonderful things that are happening in the city, including the greenways, including, some of the bifurcation of the parks, this Joe Louis Greenway, I don't know if you've heard about that, but the 65-mile greenway. These are all wonderful things that are going to help you all sell this area to new companies, because I honestly believe that our time is now, and it's been happening, but all these things are coming together in just a really beautiful way.
Yeah, and just going back to what you said earlier, there was activity in Corktown. There's a community in Southwest Detroit. This is going to be a catalyst for even more. But one of the things that Ford did extremely well, and this is a credit to you and your team, Mary, was engaging the surrounding community from day one. Talk about that process. What is community engagement done well when you're leading a project of this size? And then what were some of the ways that input and feedback from the community actually informed the project in ways that you didn't even anticipate?
Yeah, so a couple of things. I mean, the first is that as Ford Philanthropy, as Andrew said, we were the Ford Fund before. We had been in this community for over 10 years. We actually had a community center in Southwest Detroit. So the neighborhood knew us. I mean, they knew Ford. I think they trusted us. I was fortunate personally to have come from economic development. So I had worked in the city of Chicago for the mayor and had done countless of community meetings. And I remember as part of this community benefits ordinance process that the city actually mandates, there was some trepidation by the team. Oh gosh, 11 weeks of community meetings. How is this going to go? And I remember I was super excited about it actually, because you really do learn a lot if you go in with the right sort of listening skills. And so the very first night we showed up at the meeting and we, of course, present our presentation, and at the time, so hilarious that it was a mobility innovation hub, but we were thinking about, well, where is everyone going to park, right? So, we were going to actually put a parking deck on the back of the station, like attach it to the back of the station. And, we present this, and a lovely woman who I'll never forget gets up and says, well, I just want you to know that I live in Mexican Town, and that's the front of the station for me. I had never thought of that. We had never thought of that, right? We had thought that the front was the Michigan Avenue side and that the back was the Southwest side. And so literally that completely changed our entire approach to how we thought about that building. So now everything's been designed as a 360 building. We didn't put the parking deck there. Actually, there's some complaining about the fact that you have to park and walk, which is a good thing. So we have a beautiful parking deck, the Bagley Hub, actually on the Greenway going down to the riverfront. And, it was done with the Greenway in mind. We have bathrooms there. We have community amenities. So everything has been intentionally thought about, but that community input was really, really critical. I mean, we literally changed our design because of it.
So what's happening now at the station? What is the next, through the summer? And then as you think a year from now, what's going on at the station and on the campus that makes you and Bill and others say, we got this right. This is headed where we want it to?
Well, I don't think you ever know if you get it right, So, I mean, we hope we're moving in the right direction. So, the book, if you haven't been down there, the book depository is just a really amazing hub of energy and activity, and I'm really proud of that, and a lot of that is just the partnerships that we have with others. The station right now, of course, we did want to take this moment to really celebrate the renovation. Everyone always expects you open something and there's restaurants and retail, and we really wanted to take this moment to really celebrate the construction workers. What they did and what they brought back, it's really phenomenal, right? Because everything was stripped. So for the past couple of weeks, we've had open houses. Over 50,000 people have come through. We have a beautiful exhibit, in all the rooms set up. Now we'll transition to having those open houses on the weekends, and then we'll have programming associated with those open houses. And then in the fall, you'll start to see some retail and, coffee shops, et cetera, come, and then we'll have our first tenants move in. So, things will start to move more quickly come fall, and the good news is that, the towers are actually mostly leased. Obviously, we want to make sure that we're careful and we really think about who's down there, because remember, this isn't just about filling space. We're not just looking for tenants. We're not looking for, who just wants to come. We want to make sure that the right people are there, who have the right inclination to be a part of this innovation, environment that we're creating.
And for someone in the room is thinking this, but weddings,
oh my gosh,
bat mitzvah, if you want to rent it out for a night, you can have a major event there.
Yeah, well, how many people have even seen the space? Has anyone actually seen it live? Do you think it's pretty? Are you kind of, what's interesting is we are working to bring a hospitality partner, a hotel, to that location. And, when people came to see it, to then, of course, apply through the RFP process, I remember one in particular said, I'm not from here. I expected this building to be pretty, but this building rivals any building in Europe. He goes, I literally can't believe that you have this kind of asset in the city of Detroit. And I thought that was really profound, and it's true. I think that when people come in there, their jaw drops when they see that grand hall. If you'd seen it before, your jaw would have dropped for other reasons, but it's pretty impressive.
So for folks in the room who maybe have interests in Corktown or Southwest or are considering projects or investments in that part of the city, what do you see as the needed opportunities from folks like the folks who are in this room, or what would you say to someone who is maybe on the fence or sort of thinking about whether this is the right next play for them?
Yeah, I mean, I think that, one thing I always like to make sure people understand is because it is about innovation, we want everything to be innovative, right? So we're not thinking about retail and hospitality and other things in the traditional way. So if you have ideas for how to rethink retail or rethink, how, it's a tough market, as you know. This is not an easy market to bring folks in. But if you're at all creative or you're doing something super innovative, we, of course, would love to talk to you.
And speaking of innovation, we got to know each other 7 months ago because you approached the Children's Foundation, really on behalf of Bill and Lisa Ford as well, who said, we want to do something for the community to celebrate the opening of Michigan Central, and we want it to be innovative, we want it to be different. And we ended up coming up with the concept where we put together a pot of money. The goal was $10 million. We've said we've exceeded that. We'll announce the total amount next week. But instead of just using that money and doing a round of grants out to the community, which I think is how you often see these sort of philanthropic components go, we actually did something different where we're creating endowments for 10 organizations that serve kids in the city of Detroit. And so each of these organizations is going to have a $1.5 million endowment for their benefit, which will provide them annual income in perpetuity. So they'll be here as long as that train station. Why structure the philanthropic component this way? You had a million things going on. You could have done a round of grants and probably done your goodwill in the community, but you wanted to do something different. Talk about.
Yeah, I mean, I give all the credit to Bill and Lisa Ford in particular. I mean, I think, we thought about this long and hard and realized that this moment in history was not going to happen again. Actually, interestingly enough, the station never got a kind of grand opening when it first was built because there was a fire at the original train station and they had to quickly open this new Michigan Central to be the station. So we kind of feel like we had the first real opening of the station. And as part of that, it was a historic moment to really think about doing something for the community. And so, Lisa Ford really wanted to do something that would be lasting and that we could really look at and point to 10, 15, 20 years from now, just like the building itself, and say, what did we seed? What did we put in place? And of course, we look to work with organizations, and your organization, really stood out. And like I said, I'm just going to plug Andrew again, because I'll never forget when I called Andrew, he literally sent me in one day his proposal and his ideas for how we could do this endowment in a really equitable and innovative way, and he was just a standout. So I think it's really interesting. I mean, endowments sound boring, but when you really understand what they are and sort of the trust-based philanthropy aspect of what's so important about it, it is innovative. And interestingly enough, in Detroit, we have a lot of organizations, we give a lot of money out, but we don't think about how to sustain these organizations and help them really not be in always raising money. And these endowments really help with that.
Yeah, well,
so thank you.
Thank you. It's been an absolute pleasure. Last question, because we're at time. For those who haven't been in the station, how do they come see it?
Yeah, so it's open on the weekends, public openings. You can go online, michigancentral.org. And is that right? .com, sorry. Okay, Friday evening and Saturday, you can come and just come. You don't even have to get a ticket, according to Catherine, who's here. Literally, please come, because really, you guys are the ones who can talk it up. You can talk it up as a destination for the city, which only attracts people to come here for other reasons as well. So we hope that it will really serve, as a continued catalyst for great things happening in the region.
Very Culler, everyone.
Thank you.